Like I'm in just a towel in the hallway talking to Michael Seibel. Like I'm like, why am I supposed to decline the call? Like there are certain problems that will, or certain companies that will only get built by a specific once in a decade, once in 2 decades, once in a century founder. And he was like, I think you're that person for ColorStack. Do it. I think what people get wrong is they try to actually have balance where there's like literally like, it's literally equal. What happened was there was this organization called URMC. So the myth is that I started it. It's not true. URMC existed.
Welcome back, guys. Today on our episode, we have Jehron Petty. Jehron is a Cornell alum. He graduated in 2020 with a Bachelor of Science in CS from the College of Engineering. He was the co-president of URMC and ex-product lead at ABDA. Jehron, can you tell us more about your Cornell involvements and
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So like you said, I was a co-president of URMC at Cornell. While I was in undergrad, I also interned as a software engineer at both Two Sigma and Google. Went on to do the associate product management internship at Google. And then instead of returning as a full-time associate product manager at Google, I turned down that offer to pursue ColorStack full-time. So I'm actually full-time founder and CEO of ColorStack right now. And it's a nonprofit that's kind of building on the work that URMC is doing at Cornell and kind of scaling that to campuses across the country. But I'm pretty sure we'll go into that a little bit later.
Definitely. For everyone listening, I just want to note that this is a very big moment for all three of us. If just for a little context, about a year ago, we came up with the idea for breaking it down. And of course, we approached Jehron to kind of chat about it, talk about how we could go approaching this. And COVID came around and we kind of put this aside. And so we're finally having this conversation and, extremely excited for you to share your background, share your experience with the audience and kind of just drop some hot gems. So Jehron, we'll leave the floor to you to kind of talk about your experience before Cornell, kind of give the audience like a little background about who you are as a person.
Yeah, for sure. So it's actually a good place to start. So I don't know how far to go back, but I'll just say this: like I grew up in New York, started out in Brooklyn and Canarsie. I actually was born in St. Thomas, so in the Caribbean, and then we moved to Brooklyn. My family moved to Brooklyn within a year after I was born, and then moved out to Long Island. And so, been in New York basically my whole life, and my earliest kind of career or life aspirations were the typical kind of young, Black aspirations where I wanted to play sports, I wanted to rap. I actually still have songs that I made on YouTube still, freestyles of Drake songs or whatever the case may be. So that was like my middle school life, really focusing on my potential rap career and also potentially playing video games. I was putting a lot of stuff on YouTube then. And then high school, I kind of focused more so on basketball. I went to the number one basketball high school in the state of New York. So we had about a few New York State championships over the course of 6 to the past 10 years. I wasn't a starter, but like I still was in the culture. So like, it kept me going as like, okay, I could do something with this. But then during my junior year of high school is when I kind of took my academics a little bit more seriously, took tech a little bit more seriously, took business a little bit more seriously, and actually started my first company fixing iPhones. And so that's kind of what changed my trajectory in terms of what I wanted to do. Applied to Cornell, got an ED, and now I shouldn't say now, but then that's what ended, that's what helped me land at Cornell.
That's really awesome, man. You were entrepreneurial even before Cornell. And your route to Cornell was also extremely interesting. I don't know a lot of people, or at least I haven't been. I'm not that into sports. Of course, I played soccer in high school and things like that. But going to the number one high school in your state for basketball, that must have had a big influence. And you kind of popping out of that and pursuing entrepreneurship and kind of taking academics more serious. I would say that must have been a big transition in your life, right?
Yeah, a lot of people I mean, even one of my closest friends at the time was like a big brother to me. Like when I first told him that I wasn't gonna play varsity in my junior year, he basically stopped talking to me for a little bit. He like that. I remember that conversation like it's yesterday. Like, this was someone I worked out with every day. Like the previous summer, we had worked out 3 times a day, every single day. Gym, park, all that stuff. And the fact that I had now basically threw all that away and said, "Yeah, I'm not gonna pursue this anymore as seriously." Like he was devastated. He didn't really understand it. And so a lot of people didn't understand it actually around me,
Was
but I knew. Mhm.
was it like because you didn't want it anymore? Like what do you think? What do you feel changed?
I mean, that's a good question. There was a bunch of different factors into it. I mean, also just statistically, like in order for somebody who's like 5'10" to make it to the league, like I have to have like crazy bounce, I have to be super
Yeah.
fast. Like there were all these things working against me, obviously, but I still thought, I mean, I very well could have went like to a low tier D1.
Yeah.
But I guess what happened for me was that like I want to be the best at whatever I do. And I feel like if I'm not going to Duke, then I'm not, then this is probably not for me. You know what I'm saying? There's probably somewhere else or some other area out there that I could apply my skills to. And mind you, up until that point, I was doing well. Like I was captain of my JV team. I was doing well in AAU. And so like there was that momentum. But then once it got to a point where I was like, okay, well, am I going to continue to sustain this and be at the top? Right. Like it didn't really like the projection didn't really map out in the way that I wanted it to. And on top of that, I felt like a lot of people growing up were telling me that I was good at math, I was good at science, I was good at this, good at that. And so there was also that curiosity in me to say like, there could be something there for me that I could be exponentially better at. But yeah, not the majority of people didn't get it, didn't support it.
It's like a calculated, conscious choice that you made, I guess. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like making big decisions is some from our previous conversations that we've had, seems to be something that you're interested in, and that you love doing while other people kind of stray away from it, run away from it. But we'll dive into that a little bit more. Maybe now might be a good transition to kind of Cornell.
Yeah.
And would you mind reminiscing on your past Cornell experiences, some of the things that stood out?
Yeah, so came into Cornell. I mean, there's a lot to unpack at Cornell. Like there was a lot that kind of that happened over the 4 years. The way I'd summarize is I came in very ambitious. Like I was like, okay, I knew Cornell was for me. I knew this was an Ivy League school. I knew this is, opportunity of a lifetime. So I'm coming in like, yo, like I'm trying to take advantage of everything this place has to offer as fast as possible. But also kind of my motive was to also start a company and eventually like drop out. Like that was actually my original motivation. Like I wanted to take as much advantage of everything, learn as much as I can so I could eventually start a company and drop out. And so came in, didn't really care that much about classes, didn't do well. My first set of courses, I got a sub-3 GPA my first semester. But in parallel, I also got my first internship. So I got an internship at 2 Sigma, probably an $80 billion hedge fund at this point. And I also got an offer from Google or kind of a sort of offer, a contingent offer, but they were super concerned about my GPA and like wanted me to explain why I got like a C in chemistry and like a C in intro to mechanical engineering. And I said no, like I didn't, all I had to do was justify that why I got those grades so that I would get the offer. And I was like, no, I'm not explaining that because that doesn't make sense. Like if you're hiring me to code and you want me to justify why I got a C in chemistry, like 2 Sigma didn't ask me that. And they were paying me more, right? So I was like, okay, so there's no way that I'm going to compromise here. So yes, I went to 2 Sigma. Also the following semester at school, I got a 4.0. So like that was like a shift for me where I like did super poorly my first semester, let everybody down that kind of was supporting me and getting to that stage and really committed myself to like fixing that situation, getting my study habits up, finding the right friend group. And I turned it up the next semester just to prove it to myself really at the end of the day that I could, and I did belong there. And so,
it's interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like freshman year is a very challenging moment of life, not even college.
Yeah.
You know, like being thrown in an environment that you kind of have never been exposed to. Like for me, I went to a high school that I knew the kids I was in class with since sixth grade. Same 90 kids. And same neighborhood. Everyone looked like me, same experiences.
Right.
You know, top of my class. And you know, challenges where we were creating our own challenges to kind of go ahead and do it. But now it's a stark difference, right? So I'm really curious, like, how did you go about navigating that? And the next semester, what were some of the things that you did to kind of bounce back?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I definitely think that college as a whole is a very important and like ever changing, or I guess the most change that you'll see probably in your life, if you do it right, I think. So for my first semester going to my second, like what I changed, I mean, it was a mentality shift because like you don't really know, at least in engineering, like you don't really know what your grades are till the end of the semester. And so it was like the feedback loop wasn't there of like, okay, yeah, I did poorly on this. I know I did, but there's a curve. So I'm assuming that I might do well at the end of the semester. But once the actual grade hit, it was like, oh, I didn't. So that was, you know, kind of the wake up call, the mentality shift, or it influenced the mentality shift where I was like, okay, well, now I know I got to do things differently from day one because one, I won't get the updated feedback of like how I'm doing. So I have to just do well or not. And two, I obviously did poorly and wanted to come back. So mentality shift, friend group, I think at first I had a couple of roommates. I had a roommate, and then a couple other friends around that. I mean, nobody really cared that much about school. You know, they were all partying, you know, doing anything but really schoolwork. And so that was influencing me, which is fine, I guess, in the grand scheme of things. But like for me, that wasn't the priority or what shouldn't have been my priority. And I mean, you know, they all had struggles as well. And it's like, okay, well, we could have just done the right thing in the first place. We wouldn't have been in this position. So I found some other folks that were in my same position. So we all kind of had our own separate friend groups. The first semester didn't do well our first semester, and it all came together like, oh, we trying to find a new friend group so that we could actually turn it up and do better. So that was actually a coincidence that we all went through the same thing, such that we all had the same justification for coming together and all had the same goal that next semester. And we all saw an increase in our GPAs. We had this routine I keep talking about where you know, we wake up, go to our first class, the first person who gets out of class goes to the library, secures a room for us, and we basically, you know, go to that library room, that study room till midnight. We eat obviously in the middle of that, but that was our day every day except for Sunday. Sunday was the most flexible day that we gave ourselves, but you know, we were doing 1 hour work sessions and then like 10 minutes of like, okay, let's go on Twitter, let's freestyle, let's have some fun. But outside of that, we're not talking to each other unless it's about work.
Was it midnight or 11:45? I feel like
it definitely. So I think we were trying to be back to the dorms.
Okay.
Right.
No, because I feel like I remember you telling us, you know, when we were freshmen, how you would always stay in the library till like 11:45, and that kind of stuck in my head.
I think it was because the library closed at 11:45. I think it might have been the timing of, because I know it definitely closed at a certain time. And we would have to leave, I think, 15 minutes early or something like that. The rooms were closed, something like that. So yeah, so that was, it probably was 11:45.
Got you. You know, you literally talked about something extremely big that I kind of, I'm realizing how important it is as I go through college, and that's environment, like the people that you're with, the things that you use, the things that you listen to, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And for me, environment really made sense to me when I started seeing my discipline is not that good, right? And instead of, for me, environment became really big because instead of controlling your discipline and really trying to resist, like, let's say, you know, using your phone, for example, if your phone is not there, then you're not going to use it.
Right.
And that can apply to a lot of things. So I think this is an extremely big point that you kind of just glossed over to some degree, is that environment is extremely important in how you in how you achieve your goals, because that's the process and the environment that you're in doing so.
Right.
I just wanted to emphasize that really, really well.
Yeah, I think to your point too, it's like physical but also social environment, because
Exactly.
in that case you could physically remove your phone, but if you also surround yourself with like 5 friends that don't use their phones as often, right? Like then you'd feel weird by using your phone, like if you're in a group and they're trying to talk and you're not. Like it's also like you could physically remove the phone, or you could put yourself in a social setting that just disincentivizes doing that behavior.
Yeah, definitely. The social setting is also important because, back in high school, um, I feel like it's more important in college as well because in high school you can kind of balance it. So, in high
Yeah.
school you could be with your social friends and then you can go back home, do your homework and still do good in class. But
Yeah.
in college though, it's kind of different. You don't have like a home that you go back to. Like you're kind of living with
Everything's
the same
everything's
people.
there.
So
Yeah.
like the environment that you are in will eventually affect it. Or even if you try to like fight, it's going to be like a tougher fight, right?
Yeah.
So the more you make it easier, adaptable to your wants and needs, it'll be better. Yeah.
exactly.
100%.
But if I remember correctly, in a lot of our conversations in the past, and even events at URMC, you emphasize office hours and going to office hours a lot. And I'm guessing that was something big that helped you kind of bounce back. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with office hours as a TA, how to best utilize that, and other resources on campus that students should go about utilizing to further achieve their academic goals?
Right. Fundamentally, I believe there's a ton of resources that Cornell or any school has, whether they're ideal and effective to the fullest extent or not, that I think students in general don't take advantage of. And there's various different reasons for that. But I think office hours is one of those things. I think the nature of office hours is kind of like the painkiller versus the vitamin type situation where people use it as a painkiller where it's like, oh, I don't know what to do now. I can't get through this problem. It's due tomorrow. So we're going to all 50 of us go to this last office hour with this one TA. It's a 50-person queue, and you're probably not going to get your questions answered, and you're going to end up screwed anyway. We use it as this painkiller. And for me, what shifted in my head was like, I started to use it as a vitamin. So I started to actually go to off the first off, like let's say you get a P set every once a week, and it's they announce it on a Thursday. There's office hours on that Friday and Saturday and Sunday that nobody go to, because it's like, why would I even think about this assignment on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday if it's due next Thursday? And so for me, it's not only taking advantage of office hours, but strategically using it to your benefit. So now, while you're going to that last office hour using it as a painkiller and only getting, if you're lucky, getting 3 minutes with the TA, I'm going on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I'm getting the full hour because nobody else is there. Right. And so at that point, what I would do is I would like look at all the questions, do a first glance. I can already tell which ones I don't know, right, by just looking at the question. Oh yeah, I know that one. I know that one. I know that one. Oh, that one I literally don't even know how to start. So I would go and say, okay, how would I even start this? What are the key points here, et cetera, kind of go through the harder problems first, so that next week, all I'm doing are the easier ones. And I already got the hard ones out of the way. I already kind of got my mind right to figure out how to do them. So that was so my advice there with specifically office hours is kind of use them, one, but use them strategically too, because like it's kind of I forgot what the phrase is, but like, I forgot what it's just the idea that like everybody's gonna do the same thing, and what everybody's gonna do, so just do something differently so you can get a better outcome, right?
Yeah.
Then with resources in general, I think this is super simple, but I think nobody does it. So it's just like, actually read your department newsletters, actually go into your department and look at those flyers that are on the wall that nobody reads. Like there are things out there, tutoring services, events that are out there. Just it depends on the department, but there are tons of things that departments spend money on for students that like students don't really care about. But if you just look for them, there could be some nuggets in it. Like there could be that one professor that is like always hosting these like general office hours or coffee chats, and no student goes to them. But like you went to them, you got a referral, you got a this, you got a that, you got a that, because you were the only one that took advantage of it. So I would say just kind of look for those gems that might be right in front of you.
It always feels like these resources. I mean, office hours is always there. Everyone knows that, but like you said, the websites and stuff like that, the information we find on the websites, it feels as though we don't know them. We don't have access to them, but we just have to like take that one tiny step, and they're kind of there. But on the outside, it seems as though there's nothing available to us, but it kind of requires that small action from our part, and I feel like there's a lot actually going on.
Yeah,
definitely. I think professors too, to your point, like I think when I first came in, and this is how my mindset changed towards professors. Like when I first came in, I just saw them as like, teachers. High school, that was, the high school idea of a teacher is just like, all right, teachers give me homework. I got to do that. Teachers teaching in the class. I got to listen.
Right.
Type of thing, right? But in college, I feel like professors are not just teachers. Like there's so much more than that. They're experts in the fields that you're interested in. They have connections in the fields that you're interested in. Especially at Cornell, like these professors are extremely big, especially in the CS department, right? And so when I first came in, I didn't build relationships with professors. I didn't, and it might seem like, oh, okay, like this person is a dean of computer science, a dean of this college, like, yeah, they're so higher up and like I can't get to them, a type of thing. But it's incredible how available they are once you start looking for them, once you start trying to communicate with them. And that's something that completely changed my college experience and how I approach college and learning and even classes in general.
Right.
I just wanted to emphasize that again.
I feel like we should talk about URMC. I feel like that's a big part of your Cornell experience, like you mentioned earlier. Can you tell us about your experiences with URMC at first? What motivated you to, be president of that? Works and everything.
Yeah, good question. So origin story here. So I joined. I started at Cornell, CS major, did well in my first few classes, became a TA, became this kind of mentor within the community because I had gotten an internship so early. I've been doing well in all my classes. And so people looked up to me to kind of get support, mentorship. And I was committed to that because I had gone out, not only seeing the performance of students in computer science courses that I was in, specifically underrepresented students, but also when I went out on my internship, I was the only Black intern, also the only Black kind of employee in that office of 100 plus people. So that was like, I hated all of that. And so what happened was that sophomore year, I really dedicated a lot of my time to be, obviously I became a TA. Like that was the biggest thing. I became a TA for this one course that everybody really hated, but for underrepresented students, it was disproportionately affecting our ability to get into the CS major and stay. So what you would see is that a lot of students over time would take Python, data structures, take discrete math, not get the grade they need to and drop. Or maybe they do get a decent grade, but it's like they no longer feel confident and they just drop the major and they go into like, ORI or information science. There's nothing wrong with those majors, but like if you're going there as a backup as opposed to like what you actually want to do, like that's wrong, right? And so I devoted a lot of my personal time to helping students. Then what happened was I ran out of time in a day to help, right? And so what happened was there was this organization called URMC. So the myth is that I started it. It's not true. URMC existed. So URMC was an organization that existed. I didn't know about them until my middle of my sophomore year, which just tells you like it was small. Like it wasn't like a huge thing. It was a small. They were just getting started. It was kind of just like whoever was there at the beginning kind of just knew about it, and it kind of just word of mouth kind of spread. So it was a little bit slower, but yeah. So like they were in the first few years of being in existence, and so I was like, hey, this thing needs to be bigger. Like I'm mentoring all these students over here. We're doing all this work over here. You guys have an official org with funding, with resources, with academic support. With department recognition that we can leverage to scale the work that I've been trying to do myself one-on-one. And so I just joined. Like I didn't care about a role. I didn't care about being anything. I just wanted to make this a bigger org. And so the funny thing is, the story is I actually came to an e-board meeting. I don't remember. I think this was like fall of my sophomore year. And like, this could have been the ego in me or something like that, but I just completely disagree with everything they were talking about. I was like, why the hell are we focused on this? Like, why are we trying to copy these other kind of things that these other orgs are doing? Like, why aren't we focusing on this? And so I left.
You're not even part of the board at that, but when you,
No.
yeah.
No, they just like he said come to, I think it was Kevin at the time. Shout out Kevin, but he invited me to the e-board meeting because it was super lax. Invited me to the e-board meeting. I'm trying to make it short, but like he invited me to the e-board meeting. And I sat down just listening. I just to listen in on kind of what was happening, what their priorities were, just to get a feel for things. And after that meeting, I didn't go to any other meeting for the rest of the semester because I was like, what is even going on here? Like, I completely just disagree with everything. And so I emailed one of the co-presidents, I think it was Jordanos at the time, because Jordanos and Kevin. And so me and Jordanos went back and forth on Messenger. It wasn't like bad. It was just like I expressed my concerns, and then he kind of let me know like, hey, like I understand, but there's also kind of like it was the time of the year that made us talk a lot about corporate sponsorships and how we can get money. It wasn't that was the only goal, for the org as a whole. So like it was just that me being novice at the time and not really knowing what was going on. But I was like, no, like this makes no sense. Like I'm not going back to the org. Forget you guys. I'm gonna figure something else out. So that was at the end of the semester. So then I came back the following semester and officially not officially joined, but started to go to e-board meetings and help them figure things out. And so I had no role. I was the one who came up with the group me. So we didn't have a group me.
Wow.
I literally
That's crazy.
I was like, yeah, like we should have a group me 100%. And that was when they grew from, 15 to 20 active people to like almost 150 within that semester. Cause I literally just added all the people that I knew. And then I went around and just looked at people who looked unrepresented in CS, right? And just said, hey, do you want to join the group me? So that was the first thing I did. And then the next semester still didn't have a role, but I was like, I don't care. So we started planning events. It was so weird because that's when I brought Rami with me, because Rami then committed to being in CS. So I brought him with me onto the e-board. We both had no roles and we just committed to growing the org. And so even the first G-Body meeting, like Rami and I led the G-Body meeting. It was like so weird. And like, I really have to give credit and appreciation to Sophie and Malam, who were co-presidents at the time. Cause I don't know if we were overstepping our boundaries, but it really felt like they were just embracing the energy that we had, because I think for them, they were kind of burnt out. Because they had been working on this for 3 years, and it's like so much challenges that come with it, and especially being in the diversity space. And I think us having this newfound energy was like a blessing, because it's like, well, they've been working on it for so long. It's like good to see new, fresh eyes and hands on the problem, because we were just ready to go. So I don't know if they've never said anything that was like you shouldn't have done this, but like I think I'm super thankful that they allowed us to just run with it, because we had so much energy. So then that junior year was when we became co-presidents, and the rest is history. We grew it to almost 300 members.
Rest is history for sure, bro. Quick shout out to Rami.
Yes, sir.
You're listening for sure. I know.
Hey, I just talked to him this morning.
Yeah, Rami. You're coming up next, by the way, bro. Like, we're not leaving you, so don't think about that. But speaking of energy, that's something almost everyone at URMC and even outside of URMC recognizes when it comes to the period of time when you guys were co-presidents of that.
Right.
Dynamic duo. Just vibes were different for sure. And I think that energy is really what attracted people too, right? It was genuine passion. Like, talking to y'all, hearing you guys lead the G-Body, even one-on-ones and outside of URMC, it's just the energy is there, and I think that's something big that really attracted people. But what else do you attribute your the growth of the community to? Once you guys became co-presidents of it, how did you guys lead, and what were some of the things that you guys learned in that process?
Yeah, that's a good question. There was a couple key things that played a part. So the first thing was, like you said, the sheer like commitment, like the obvious passion for this work, where it's not just, oh, we're doing this to put something on our resume. I'm not saying anybody did that. I'm just saying that it was clear that we weren't doing that. And so it didn't feel like we were marketing an org. It felt like we were just trying to help. And so, especially for me, when it was like, okay, I'm bringing all these people into this community, it was like, of course I'm going to do that, because Jehron came and helped me just because he wanted to help me. And so now we're kind of formalizing this. Oh, bet, like I'm definitely going to come through. The same thing that happened to Rami, right? Like I helped him stay in the major, and now I was like, yo, come lead this org with me. Like he was like, duh, like of course I will. So I think that, like you said, that passion was super obvious. We wore that on our sleeve. I think the second thing was really committing to running a good organization and becoming great, leaders. Like I think, I mean, I was reading leadership books since freshman year. Like I'm watching videos on leadership. I'm, asking my dad about leadership. He works in HR, so he does this stuff all the time. And I don't think any other student leaders of a club were really thinking about, oh, how do I build a good team dynamic on my e-board? You know what I'm saying? Like Rami and I became co-presidents, and the first thing that we did that winter break, we met almost every day that break. And the first thing that we did for the e-board was, we were trying to think about new structure and all this good stuff. The first thing that we did was we removed everybody's role. We said, hey, like, forget your title. Fill out this form. We're going to have a conversation with you about what are you good at and what do you want to do? And then we're going to also come up with our own set of list of what the org needs. And we're going to find the synergy between the two so we can find the perfect role for each person. And so what I think happens there is you get more efficient as an organization, where you say, here's what needs to get done, and here's where everybody's strengths are. And you actually match those up one-to-one, such that, it's not like you have anybody on the e-board that's like not holding their weight, or they're not useful, or, there's the work that needs to get done that nobody's prepared to do. So we took running an organization like it was running a company. Like, I feel like, it's very, very rare that you see that at the college student club level, right? We made it very serious. We were very intentional about culture as well. I think that's the last piece, which is like, okay, we're going to we have a standard for how we do things. We're going to put on great events. We're going to do things on time, right? We're going to, give people ample time in advance of like marketing and things like that, so they know what's happening. And we're going to listen to our members and really be responsive to their needs. And I think once you do that, it's so simple, but it's like so impactful, because that's what any member wants from a community. They want to be heard. They want it to be organized, right? And they want to see commitment and passion from the leadership team. And we did all three of those.
I like the fact that you said, you wanted to be a leader, so you were reading about leadership books early on, right?
Yeah.
And you also mentioned about how you and Rami were meeting every day during winter break to plan this. And, so you have a purpose, you have a goal you want to reach, and all your entire college experience, like, how did you keep yourself, this dedicated and motivated to do all of that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm super like purpose driven. Like, I feel like I do what I want when I want, because I want to, if that makes sense.
Nice.
Like, I really try to, I really try to live by that. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I want to do something, I'm gonna make it work. Like, if I want to start ColorStack, I'm gonna figure out a way to make that work, so I don't have to go to Google, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like at every given moment, I know what I'm optimizing for, and I'm super dedicated and focused on that. And so I make the situation work. Right. So, and it comes from, like you said, that motivation of the impact. So like, I start with purpose. I start with impact. I start with like, what do I want to see happen? What do I want to do in this season of my life? And then I work backwards and say, okay, well, how do I get there? Right. And so, while I was working on URMC, like, and everything else that was going on at the time, I was even co-founding Black Entrepreneurs in Training at the time. That's a lot of time that it takes to really run these things efficiently. And I was like, yeah, like, I don't care. Like, I don't care about anything else. So like, schoolwork is getting on the back burner. Even friendships and family at some points were getting on the back burner. I was like, I'm just hyper focused on this thing, and I'm gonna do the bare minimum elsewhere. Like, I need to identify what that bare minimum is and do it. I think what people get wrong is they try to actually have balance, where there's like literally like, it's literally equal. Right. I think that's completely flawed, because it doesn't respect your motivations. Right. And so for me, it was like, okay, I know my priorities are, so I'm going to put more time into this. And not only am I going to put more time into this, I'm also going to be okay when my grades are reflecting the amount of time that I'm now taking away from them, right? So if I do get a poor grade, like I feel like people who have this kind of idea of balance, they're like, okay, I got to get an A in my classes and I got to do well in this other thing. Well, it's like you're never going to be able to really balance it. So you have to lower your expectations for the things that you're not prioritizing.
That's extremely big what you just said, bro. Like, I think this is something that I'm starting to learn. Like when I starting off ventures on the side, and kind of they started to my time from academics and things like that, right? And initially I had this idea that you just expressed of balance is something equal across the whole spectrum, right? Putting in the work on all my classes and making sure to hit the hundreds on the prelims, putting in all the work on my startup, putting in all the work on breaking it down, putting all the work on getting internships, putting all the work.
Right.
And so like, and then the thing is, like, it's not in reality, like you start seeing things go down, like your expectations not being met.
Right. Overall.
And I see myself feeling guilty in that time, right?
Yeah.
Like it turns around to you and it's like, damn, you're not doing this. Damn, you're not doing this. And I think what you just expressed is like, it's all in the perspective that you're looking at it, and being
exactly
in that lens is extremely big. And I think that, you know, like taking that perspective on in terms of balance is extremely, extremely big, and something that I'm just starting to develop. So hopefully, you know, people listening, you guys take this and internalize it.
100%.
So I think this is enough about college. We've kind of killed the whole conversation. There's a lot of gems that students could take out of this, but you know, right now you're in a completely different place.
Yeah.
And you made a big decision to get there. And so let's kind of talk about that on transition out of college. You know, when you initially decided to go after ColorStack, you had an 8 p.m. Full-time offer from Google, which, you know, as an aspiring product manager and entrepreneur, that seems like a golden goose. All right. But you made this drastic decision to go after ColorStack instead. So can you walk us through that decision and how you went about making that decision to go after ColorStack and where you are right now?
Yeah. So the decision was made in August of 2019 when this was going into my second semester as co-president of URMC, and I was kind of, you know, seeing already great results, right? That summer alone, summer 2019, was the summer that we saw, you know, we went from August 2018, where there was like, you know, maybe 5 to 10 students max doing internships anywhere, let alone the Bay Area. And in that summer 2019 alone, we saw 30 plus students in the Bay Area alone doing internships at top tech companies, right? So that was kind of when I started to talk about URMC to other people, like, hey, we've been doing this great thing. It's been the most fulfilling thing that I've ever done in my life. And so talked to a couple of folks, talked to my mentor, or my now mentor and board member, Makinde Adeagbo. And he had told me, he basically was super energized and excited about the fact that I had success with URMC. And he had basically everybody was like, yeah, you should, you know, scale it, but like, and make it bigger. But nobody really gave me the tools or like the advice on like the strategy on how to do it bigger, do it better. And so he was the one that said, hey, you should do this. Yes, but here's how you can do it. And you should do it right after college. And so once he told me that, it was like paragraph after paragraph that night after we spoke, just here's how you could do it. Here's this idea. Here's that idea. Here's that idea. And that was when I was like, wow, we just had this conversation and you're still thinking about it that night and you're sending me all this piece of advice. I'm like, you know, he's the GOAT. You know what I'm saying? He's the GOAT. So like, I feel like the fact that he's thinking about not only me doing this, but also giving me this much advice and support, it's a huge signal, right? It's not just your mom saying, hey, you should do this because I believe in you. It's like somebody who has nothing to gain from you doing it is like, yeah, you definitely should. And so made that decision in August 2019 mentally, but then so like the goal was to raise enough money or put myself in a position to actually make that decision. So I, you know, obviously I signed my offer at Google and I was like, okay, well, if I can't do it full time, I'll just work at Google until I can. But I was in my head, I was on the fundraising trail. I was trying to work. So it was a simple decision for me. Like I said, like I do try to do what I want when I want. Because I really am just super purpose driven and like that seemed like the most purposeful thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to make it work.
So what were other people's opinions, if you care, when you made like this decision? Let's say family, friends, or did you consider their opinions on this? Because it's such a big decision, and how do you like go about like making these decisions?
Yeah, I mean, for me, what I've learned over time is like you can't include a lot of people in the decision making process, especially when they're big ones. So I used to tell everybody everything, especially for example, like with deciding not to play basketball on varsity. Like a lot of that was I didn't have to tell as many people as I did. I could have just done it and then you could have saw the outcome. And I feel like most people won't see the vision. So don't waste your time. For at least for me, what I learned was to not waste my time trying to get so much input on decisions before I make them. I just make decisions, include a couple of people, and we keep it pushing. And so in this case, I told, a couple people, like five to eight close friends and family. Like some of them didn't get how it was gonna work, but they were just like, okay, like I hear you, like I know you're gonna figure it out, so like whatever. Some of them were a little bit hesitant about like, okay, like you should probably play it safe. But overall, that wasn't my point was just to keep people up to date on me who I think I should have kept up to date. It wasn't like I wasn't asking for advice. Like I made my decision. So to your point, to your question, didn't really care, nor did I solicit that feedback on like, oh, do you think I should do this? Because once I did it, it was like, OMG, like this is so great, like this makes complete sense. Like, and nobody would have said that if I explained that to them a year ago.
That's true.
I think it's this idea of having a lot of input translates to a lot of things, right? For me,
having too much input.
Yeah, exactly. For me, I saw this through fellow and trying to build a flat organization structure, right? This past summer when Shek and I were working on fellow, we had, and I think this is one of the things that we came to you about for advice, actually. We had a team of about 11 people and, almost two software engineers, one product manager, one designer, and like 3 or 4 creative consultants, right? A lot of people, especially for this stage of a startup. And because we wanted to create this culture and environment of like, everyone kind of has a say in or has an influence in the way that we go about doing things to make it inclusive, we got to a point where we were losing clarity in exactly what we were doing. Right?
Yeah.
And I think this idea of input translates not just entrepreneurship and making big decisions, but across everything. And I think that's something I've seen too. Like losing clarity is one of the biggest issues.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you are trying to do and where you stand and too much input is in it, it kind of messes up everything. And so
focus is a competitive advantage. Like that's the best way to sum it up.
Exactly. But just to dial back a little too. So Macinday was a big influence in your decision to make ColorStack happen and to pursue that afterwards. And I'm interested in how this mentorship relationship developed. And I know you have a very interesting perspective on mentorship itself. So please take the floor to share that with the audience.
Yeah. So let me contextualize this. So I joined Neo.
And what is Neo?
Yeah, so it is a funny story about Neo. So the basic description of Neo is there was this, really I don't know if you guys know about code.org and things like that, but the co-founders of code.org, Hadi and Ali Partovi, twin brothers, they've been these huge investors in Silicon Valley. They've, sold companies and then were early investors in Airbnb, Facebook, name all the top tech companies. They probably were early investors in them. And so Ali Partovi specifically, he said, hey, I'm trying to build this new thing. Like he was like, how, athletes kind of, you're always looking for the next top high school basketball player so they can, eventually go to the league and you kind of recruit in a different way. He wants to do that with like founders and, very talented software engineers right out of college. And so his goal was to build this community of the top CS students in the country that he would interview himself.
Oh, wow.
And put them all in a community with a bunch of engineering leaders. So I was in a community. So he interviewed me. So the story is that was the basis of the community. I got an email about it. I thought it was a scam. And so I was like, there's no, like, you put me in a community with these people? Because it had the list of all the people. I'm like,
Oh,
you've got to be lying. Like, you've got to be lying. There's no way. And so I literally ignored the email.
Oh, wow.
And
wow.
So, and I'll never forget this. So Claire, she's the one that recruited me, and we're super close to this day. She followed up with me, and that was the only reason I saw the email again. She followed up. She said, "Hey, just want to, check back in. Like, are you down to chat next week?" And I was like, "Okay, why not?" And like, if she didn't follow up, I would have never been in Neo. So yeah, so she followed up. We chatted. She loved me. Team loved me. I interviewed with Ali, did a coding interview, did another, engineering walkthrough with this other person in Neo, and eventually got in. So now, get into Neo. I'm in the third class of Neo scholars. It's only 11 per year. And so now we're in this community with, people like the third employee at Google, the CTO of Facebook, right? Head of engineering at Airbnb, third employee of Dropbox. You know what I'm saying? We're now in community with these people, and not in the sense that we're just on the email list with them. Like, we actually have an annual event every year where we actually come together for a weekend and connect. And so super, super like impactful, because now you're getting to connect with people that wouldn't have taken your email otherwise because they're so busy. But like, if you meet them in person, like, now you've actually made a connection. So fast forward, I met a ton of people through that. There's a bunch of people. There's even 2 people from our board are now from Neo, and a bunch of supporters have been from Neo. So it's like, they've been super impactful. And it really changed my life. But in particular, Mackinday is also a Neo, and I met him in Neo, and then when I was on my internship, I was just trying to reconnect. I was like, hey, I'm in the Bay. Do you want to get lunch? And that's the reason we even had that conversation in August of 2019. So now, talking about mentorship, so Mackinday as a person, or just people in general who have mentored me, it's never like, you never really go out and just ask for a mentor. You kind of just like supposed to naturally make it happen. And I think there are 2 things that people get wrong with mentorship. One being they go out and look for a mentor. And the second thing being they go out looking for the wrong mentors, right? So on the second point, I think people try to like seek the most successful person in the world so they can say that they're their mentor.
Yeah.
But I think the most powerful mentors are the ones who can do one of 2 things. They can either speak to you directly in terms of your interests, skills, and what you're looking to optimize for. So they can like synthesize where you are, learn about you, and then make recommendations based on that. Or they're just, you kind of find the right person who has the same journey, a similar journey to you, so they can speak to that a little bit more. Because what happens is, in general, people are more likely to kind of project and talk to their younger selves when you ask them for advice, right? So if you're debating between going to a startup in big tech, and you ask somebody who worked in big tech all their life and like wish they could have started out in startups, they're going to be like, oh, you should work in a startup. Or if you worked at somebody who's only been at startups and never got, consistency from big company, they're going to be like, oh, you should definitely work in big tech. Like, I wish it's not about you and what you want. It's like, oh, here's what I wish I would have done personally if I was speaking to my younger self, as opposed to looking at you and saying, okay, what are you looking for right now? What are you trying to optimize for? What is your position, and what is the best set of advice for you? And so I think you got to be more intentional. You got to be more intentional about that. And what happened with Mackinday was that his story, he did both. Like, he does a great job of doing both. Like, he can synthesize where you are and give you advice for you, but he also had like the perfect experience that was close to what I'm trying to do. Like, he was a Black software engineer in industry, saw underrepresentation, and started DevColor, a network for Black software engineers. Similar here, I was a CS student, underrepresented, wanted to increase representation and support. So I started a nonprofit to support, you know what I'm saying? It's the same exact story. And so even if he wasn't good at synthesizing and giving customized feedback, just hearing from his perspective and him speaking to a younger version of himself, that's me. Like that's still gonna be helpful to me. So mentorship is huge. It can be super impactful, but I think one, don't go out looking for mentors, like go out and ask people for strategic advice and just kind of follow up as you have questions. And then two, look for the right people. Like not everybody that's successful should be your mentor.
Yeah. So Jehron, right now you're full-time working on ColorStack. You're busy with that. Can you tell us in the audience about your journey with ColorStack, what our future goals are, and the whole thing?
Yeah, so the journey, it's been fun. Like it's crazy. So let me break it down. So so you guys got to follow me here. August of 2019, I had made the decision that I was going to start ColorStack full time, like mentally. I was trying to do that. September, October, November come. I'm trying to like put together a deck, but I'm also like I'm in eLab. I'm doing like these other things as well, and so I wasn't fully focused. And like I said, focus is a competitive advantage. So I'm balancing working on Wise. I'm balancing working on ColorStack. I'm also still URMC co-president and president of Black Entrepreneurs in Training, right? So doing a lot. But what happened in November, and I was co-president or co-product lead at AppDev, right? So I was doing way too much, right? So in November is when I committed to working only on ColorStack. So URMC phased out. I dropped AppDev. Black Entrepreneurs in Training was the only one I stayed on because it was too early to leave. Was there another thing? And Wise I also dropped, right? So I dropped basically everything to commit to ColorStack. And so November was our annual NEO reunion. And I was preparing for not a pitch, but basically they do these lightning talks for the entire community. And so I was going to do a lightning talk on URMC and kind of what I'm trying to build. And that was kind of what kicked off my like fundraising partnerships, trail. And so November, after the NEO reunion, got a lot of interest, a lot of follow-ups, president of code.org, this head of engineering at this company, CTO of this company, like, let's start talking. December comes around. I get my first check, $25,000, blank check. She was like, yeah, I don't care what you build. I just want to support you. And she was like, for profit, nonprofit, don't care. I want to give you this check. And that like I was speechless.
Yeah.
Right. Like I didn't have anybody in my family. Like, this is not a thing that I have, right? Like I don't have a family members that could just write checks like that. I was never used to something like that happening. I like just believing in me as opposed to like me having to show you some business model or business plan or whatever. Never had that experience. So that was the first signal that like, yeah, I'm about to do this, somebody, like people are going to support me and I'm gonna figure this out. So now January comes around and I'm starting to talk to some more exciting people. Wahab from URX, he's now on my board. I was talking to some folks at a couple companies, Gem, Slack, Microsoft, etc. And I just start to turn it up a little bit in terms of the meeting. So my goal at that point, talking to Mackinday, meeting with Mackinday every week, by the way, to kind of get support and figure out what we need to do. So he was super supportive in the earliest days. And so now we're in January of 2020. Oh, sorry, wait. Yeah.
Yeah, you remember.
So January 2020. Wow, that's so crazy. It's literally a little bit over a year ago. So January 2020 comes around and we're like, yo, we got to start talking to way more people, right? Because we need to start. We came together and said, okay, we're trying to do this incubation where can we our hypothesis was, could we convince a company or a set of companies to pay me to build ColorStack? Because, diversity in tech was such a big problem and all these companies were making these multi-million dollar commitments. And when I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, let's just do that. Because, that's what everybody's talking about right now. And so January, February, March, April, January, February, March for the most part, meetings after meetings after meetings after meetings. There was 1 week I peaked at 40 meetings in the week.
Oh, wow.
While being a student at Cornell, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Damn.
And so it's kind of an exponential curve where the first 3, 4, 5 months of doing something, like going back to October, like nothing is connecting. But once people start to talk about you to other people, then dots start to connect and you see a little bit more traction. And that's what happened to me in March and April. So slightly going back a little bit. So in February, kind of as this stuff was happening and I was getting more conversations, mind you, they weren't converting to yeses. Like a lot of companies were still saying no. The big public companies with millions of dollars in profit, whatever, saying no to this opportunity. I went to Startup Grind out in California.
Nice. And what is Startup Grind for those that don't know?
Yeah, so it's a 1 week conference. It's a global conference for entrepreneurs, VCs, tech community, held in the Bay Area. And so I actually got some funding to get the Black entrepreneurs crew, the whole crew, to go. And while I was there, I actually also got introduced to Michael Seibel from YC, from Y Combinator. And so for those who don't know, Y Combinator, biggest accelerator in the world, funded Airbnb, Stripe, Coinbase, etc. And so got introduced to Michael Seibel, and let me. I'm not speaking a lot about this. But this is very important. I got introduced him via email. I was like, do you have some time this week? I can be super flexible because I'm at a conference, like whatever. He basically doesn't say, he just respond. I give him my number in the email. He doesn't respond. He just calls me right away. And this is like 7 a.m. in the morning. I'm literally just getting out the shower, just in my towel. My roommates are sleeping. So I go outside in the hallway. Like I'm in just a towel in the hallway talking to Michael Seibel. Like, I'm like, why am I supposed to decline the call? Like, no, I got to answer, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking. I'm telling about ColorStack. I'm telling about this. I'm telling about that. And he tells me two things that always will stick with me. I think I still have them in my notes. The first thing he said is Google is a waste of time. Don't go back to Google. The second thing he said was, I think that, tons of problems in this world are just going to naturally get solved because, just that's just the way the innovation works. But there are certain problems or certain companies that will only get built by a specific once in a decade, once in 2 decades, once in a century founder. And he was like, I think you're that person for ColorStack, because he said that as running running YC for 10 years or whatever, he thought that he would see more people approach him with something that you're trying to build, but he's only seen, I think, maximum 2 that were kind of close, one being Jopwell, which still wasn't really focused on kind of what we're building. So he was like, the fact that you're the only person that I've ever really heard come to me and thinking about building this, like, I think you're the only one that can, and so you need to. And that stuck with me forever to this day. So fast forward now. So he is on the board of TripleByte, and he's like, yo, so they're trying to do something interesting here where they're not trying to take the typical hire a head of diversity, do the whole thing that all these companies are failing at. They're trying to get creative about their approach to diversity. And so I think some sort of incubation investment deal here could work. So now I'm talking to TripleByte in parallel to talking to these other companies, and they're all saying no. So for the next few months, I'm just getting no's from big companies, to be honest. TripleByte conversation starts in February, that same week, and goes all the way to June when we actually signed the incubation deal. Originally, they were kind of looking more for they wanted the ColorStack to be they wanted to build something for college students kind of in-house and build community around diverse students. I wasn't trying to come in and they wanted to hire me for that role to run it in-house. So I would have had beautiful salary, a budget to hire people. It would have been crazy, probably would have been nice. But I was like, no, ColorStack needs to be a separate thing. And that's because of the students. The students can't feel like they're being it's a corporate play. It has to feel like it was designed for them. And I was like, no, I'm building this as a separate nonprofit. And that wasn't a simple conversation. That took months to actually communicate clearly. I think there was one thing that the CEO of TripleByte was like, because I was just talking to him the whole time, and he was like, yeah, like our lawyer is like getting annoyed because he's like, why are you guys fighting so hard to like make this work with this random, Cornell grad or whatever? And it was like, well, they really believed in kind of what I was building and they wanted to make it work regardless. So I was pushing back on a lot of the arrangement, but I think eventually it worked out. It was keeping us as separate entities, paying, I'm an employee of Triple Byte, so they pay my salary and they give ColorStack some budget. And that once I signed that, I was like, yep, call my Google recruiter. I was like, yep, it's clip. I'm doing something a little bit more impactful here. I'll see you on the flip side. If you want to partner with us, like, but yeah, that's kind of like, so that was the first real, like, okay, I did the thing that I needed to do to run this full time. And then after that, I did I in total raised about $500,000. But after that first incubation thing, it kind of started the momentum of like getting the corporate sponsorships and then getting even a multi-year 6-figure grant from a foundation. So that was the fundraising journey to get to the starting point. Hired a couple of people. I have a director of programs now. We have a community manager, program assistant. It's just been amazing. We've just been iterating. We launched a program called Sprout. We're thinking of a whole set of new programs this year to help with career development and we're doing a bunch of things, right?
Yeah.
The vision, so that's the journey. That's a little bit about like what we're doing now, which is not important. The vision is, we support or we create this portfolio of programs and experiences that can touch every Black, Latinx, or Native American computer science student in the country. And by that, I mean, not everybody has to join our community and be so buddy-buddy with us, but maybe it's just one event in the 4 years of your college experience that you went to. Like, we want to literally have the future is every single Black, Latinx, and Native American CS graduate can say they were somehow impacted by ColorStack's work, because we want to build a full portfolio of programs and experiences because we realize that not everybody's going to want to do a 10-week fellowship, right? Not everybody's going to want to go to our summit. But if we can build different experiences like a hackathon and then an entrepreneurship thing, and then, a developer fellowship, and then a career development boot camp, and then chapters, and then like if we can develop this portfolio of different programs and experiences, we're more likely to touch as many Black and brown CS students in the country as possible because there's many different schools that they can come from and many different experiences that they can have. So that's like the longer term vision. There's about 60,000 Black and brown CS students that are in college any given year. So we're at about 1,000 now. So we have a long way to go. We're almost at 2%. So we got 2% of a market. Wow. It's always good to start. So,
man, and like this really paints the picture of where ColorStack is at the moment. Like, it might seem like ColorStack was like, oh, let's do this and this happened. But this story, and I haven't even heard this in this detail. It's like it speaks to the testament of just keeping on going and pushing and using your network. And actually, I wanted to mention, like, hearing that from Michael Seibel, bro.
Right.
Hearing that from Michael Seibel, man, that's different.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this man sees startups every day. He's possibly seen all types of startups that were successful, unsuccessful. He's seen fellow, and he's had some comments on that in the past, and actually that was Jehron himself. And that speaks to your work ethic and what type of person you are, and the impact that you've left. And I could definitely attest to that too, right? Like, the impact is what's helped me get to where I am today.
Yeah.
And so just definitely want to test that. And I have no doubt that ColorStack is gonna do what you say it is.
I appreciate that, bro. And I'll just leave two things as well from that, as like, here's what I think. Here's the real punchline here, right? Like, the two main things about my story that I think, and let me also say there is a lot of privilege that I have as well. You know what I'm saying? Like, my parents, started out in the islands, right? But we moved out to Long Island. They have, great jobs. I was able to go to private school. We have a lot of situations where, like, there are definitely friends that I have that are in situations that don't allow them to do a lot of things that I was able to do. So there's a lot of privilege in my story, first of all. But I think kind of setting the playing ground equal. Above that, the two main things are, one, like, you got to understand that, like, any announcement, any success, right? Like, had years, months, whatever of work that was put into it that obviously couldn't be replicated at scale. Like, meaning that in order to receive different outcomes, you have to do different things. Like like I said, my weeks just looked different than an average college student. Like I was meeting 40 people per week.
Mm-hmm.
I was busy.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody's busy, but like, this is how I was busy. This is how I was allocating my time. Right. And so, I wasn't really into the whole last year in college, like trying to just have fun, trying to do whatever. Like, I spent my time a little bit differently. And it's not to say that you need to, but I'm just saying that's correlated with this outcome. Right. It's correlated with the fact that I was able to do all these things, because without that time that I committed, how was I going to even get in these rooms to have these conversations? Right. So I think really, really thinking about, like, what are your goals, and is your life reflecting those goals? Like, is your calendar week over week reflecting those goals? Like, if you say, if your fitness goals, like, okay, but you don't work out only on Friday, like what? Like, what I'm saying? Like, making sure your life reflects whatever goal you have, because you have to move differently. And the second thing is doubling down on your strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, like what you said about the Cybo comment, it's very interesting, because it's like, why do you think that I was the first or one of the very few to think about this problem? Well, I feel like other people could have started in the past. Maybe they were trying to chase something else that wasn't really for them, right? I think for me, I looked in that November time period where I dropped everything else. I was like, what am I best positioned to do in the world today? What are my experience, skills, and passions allow me to do better than anybody else? And I said, okay, I built URMC, so that's experience. My skills are, building community, selling a vision, building a team, supporting students. So that's my skills, right? And then what am I passionate about? This, right? Like, helping people, right? And so when you align those three things, how do you lose?
Mm-hmm.
It's so unlikely that you'll lose, right? But if you're like, chasing something for the money, or you're chasing something for the clout, or you're chasing something that you're not really good at, like, you're not going to see these outcomes, because you're not getting that unfair advantage. Like, I have an unfair advantage because I have all these three things in alignment. So how do you beat me? Right?
Yeah, I like how you put that. So you mentioned three things that were aligned, right?
Yeah.
Passion,
Skills,
work.
skills, and experience.
So work that aligns with your skills, passions, and experience.
Past experiences, yeah.
Well, we've learned a lot, and this is not something new. Every time we talk to people, it's a whole new, conversation and whole new lessons. And this is not the first and last time that you're going to be here.
1 hour is definitely not enough.
Yeah.
Definitely. But yeah, bro, like, really want to thank you for the time. And actually, before we end this, people that are listening probably are trying to get in contact with you.
Yeah, for sure.
So, where can they get in touch with you?
Yeah. So here's what I'll say. Follow me on Twitter at Jehron P. So JEHRONP. Definitely follow me on Twitter, connect me on LinkedIn, and I'm gonna give out my email. But here's the thing about my email. Obviously, I'm trying to hold it down for some Cornell students, so it's just my first name at ColorStack.org. But here's the thing: don't ask me for 30 minutes of my time. Don't say, "Oh, I just want to pick your brain," or "I just want to do this or do that." Like, only certain people get that privilege. If you're gonna email me, hit me with questions that I can just answer via email, and if we need to have a conversation, we'll get there. But lower likelihood of response if you just kind of make it vague and "Oh, can I book time with you for an hour to just chat?"
Mm-hmm.
No. That's just I just can't. I just can't. You know what I'm saying? So that's the strategy. So I want to give you the email, but give you the strategy as to how to use the email.
I'm sure a lot of people will take that. Definitely.
Well, this was it.
That's it.